Listen, young lady, I don't know who you are or where you came from, but you most certainly don't fit in this town. Why, you don't even fit in that dress.
Listen, sister, if I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you.
I don't think we need to resort to name-calling. I think what Calvin is trying to say is that this Elvira is a person of easy virtue, a purveyor of pulchritude, a one-woman Sodom and Gomorrah, if you will, a slimy, slithering succubus, a concubine, a streetwalker, a tramp, a slut, a cheap whore!
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Bears Presents The Bear Cave of Terror. I'm your hairy, heavy homo and horror fan host, Steve Morey. Each week, here in the Bear Cave, I invite a horror-loving guest who brings with them one of their favorite scary movies. It can be classic, gory, trashy, obscure, on a late-night indie channel, or something still banned in Britain. In other words, a thrilling work of cinematic terror that we think you might enjoy. In each episode, we'll dig into the flesh and bone of the film, highlighting our favorite scary moments, as well as stories and details from beyond the screen, all while our guest imparts their deep, and possibly concerning, love for this week's frightful vision unto you, our dear listener. And joining me for the first time here is one of my dearest, sweetest friends, Mr. Jacques Lamarre. Jacques, thank you so much for coming on to talk with me tonight.
Thank you for having me on, and now I actually know how to pronounce your last name.
Yeah, there you go. My last name is one of those things that people either know how to spell or pronounce, but rarely know how to do both.
Oh. Same here. I get Jakes, Jacques, Jacques, Lamarre. It's all over the place. So, but we've known each other for many, many years, and I'm delighted to be joining you in this forum.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been well over 20 years, I think, which is kind of wild. Yeah,
that is. It's crazy.
Oh, well, I am so excited to have you on today because we were talking about a movie that happens to be one of my longtime favorites that I first saw when I was a little kid. Definitely not the target audience for this movie. But before we get into that, let me throw it over to talk more about you and ask you about yourself and about what you like about horror, if you like horror, and then what brought you to this movie in particular?
Well, I am probably best known for, along with my comedy playwriting, for writing for drag performers, primarily Varla Jean Merman, who I have been writing for over 20 years. I've been a writing partner and collaborator with her to varying degrees over the course of 20 years. And I was a big fan of hers ever since I saw her at Wigstock in New York in the 90s. And I also write for Misconception, who is from Toronto, but she performs in Provincetown and Puerto Vallarta. And this summer's show that we've been working on is Scream Queen, and it's her tribute to horror films. So I'm hoping all your horror-loving bears will go see Misconception Scream Queen either this summer in Provincetown or over the winter in Puerto Vallarta. I've been writing for Suddenly Seymour, who is another drag queen that rotates between Provincetown and Puerto Vallarta, and a drag queen trio called Diva, who I have written this summer show. And I guess they're going to be doing it in Puerto Vallarta as well, of Sabrina the Middle-Aged Witch. And it's what happens when a 19-year-old realizes she's actually 49 and going through menopause, and how that affects her magic. So when you reached out and said, do you want to come on and talk about a horror movie or favorite horror movie? My instinct was, there are horror films that I like, and some of them, I think lend themselves towards camp, like William Castle films and things like Blood Feast and whatnot. But a friend just showed me Return of the Living Dead. Is that the fourth one?
It's related. It's not part of Romero's franchise, but it takes a lot of inspiration from it. In fact, some of the same events it kind of references a lot, even though it's kind of its own thing.
Yeah, but it's very campy. It's very campy.
Super, super campy.
And so when you ask me about like what generally will scare me in a horror film are the things that you can't see. They're the things that in my mind, like my mind will always, thanks to anxiety, come up with something worse, some worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. And so I know that it was probably cliche, but I found, when I saw it in the theater, it was in the middle of all the hype, like Blair Witch Project. I actually found very scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Paranormal Activity, at least the first one, very scary. Although I remember liking the second one as well. Things where there's just little flashes of what's going to kill you. And for one of the drag acts that I'm working with, they may have already changed their mind, but they were talking about doing kind of a Stranger Things type of show for Halloween. And I'm like, I haven't watched season 5. I was kind of up and down with the show, but season 1 was so good. And I'm like, I should go back to basics if I'm going to write this drag spoof. And so last night started watching Stranger Things season 1, episodes 1 and 2. And again, it's those things that you can't see that are out of frame that are always kind of terrifying to me. And like the first horror movie I ever saw was Psycho. And I knew that I wasn't supposed to be watching it. Now, at that point, just so people understand, I'm not as old as all that. It was on TV. I don't know if it was cut for TV, but I knew about the shower scene. There were 2 big murders in that film. Between that and Jaws, which I probably saw them in pretty close succession, because I was by myself watching Psycho in the dark. It was only all on black and white television, so it wasn't like anything unusual to watch a black and white film. And that murder is so inventively staged and filmed, and I didn't know anything about it, to know about Norman Bates and his mother and whatnot. And so I was literally I was a wreck after I watched that movie. I'm trying to remember how old I was, but I was probably like 10 or something. It's not like the way that horror has escalated over time, but I mean, it's such a landmark film. And even like Jaws, the opening sequence with the woman swimming and you can't see what's coming, but it's coming. And that music is so good. And the music in Psycho is so good,
Absolutely.
And so, but when you ask me about this, I'm like, I'm sure you have people who are real horror aficionados who are not only listening, but on as guests. And I'm like, how do I not seem like a dweeb picking the most basic horror films? And I said, to me, what I love is that intersection of horror and comedy, where things like Young Frankenstein or the Addams Family movies, there's even like weird intersections with things like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which is a Russ Myers film, or the Grindhouse features that Quentin Tarantino did that are kind of horror, kind of action, kind of comedy, very bloody. And so I just kind of love when you're disarmed by humor and a lot of those like old, Plan 9 from Outer Space, things that were going for an aesthetic and missed it.
That's a very gracious way of putting they were just terrible, but they had a direction. It just was bad direction.
Yeah. And it's actually probably a good segue to the film we are going to talk about, because she got her start kind of introducing those films.
Yeah.
And there are clips of them that are featured in in the movie.
Which I thought was just really fun. Just a fun little reference to where she came from, where this character sort of cut her teeth, where, the purpose for this character. And, getting to see one of the scenes, and we'll talk about it, but one of those scenes specifically where she puts on the show as a live show for the audience is, to me, I thought was one of the most fun bits in this film. But what we're talking about, the movie that we're all chatting about today, is 1988's Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, starring Cassandra Peterson as, of course, Elvira, and directed by James Signarelli, who I believe was, up to this point, was most famous for directing a lot of SNL filmed shorts. I think it was Easy Money was the only other feature film that he had done. Easy Money starring Rodney Dangerfield. So it was interesting that he was chosen for this movie. I'm trying to think the best way to put this. I think like his heart was in the right place for this film. I think he kind of understood that it was funny, it was spooky, it was campy. Not necessarily sure if he succeeded fully in putting the vision to film, but regardless of how the critics took it, I think the fact that it's still considered a cult classic almost 40 years later shows how just powerfully fun this movie was. It hit the spooky notes, it hit the comedy notes, and it's just pure camp.
It is everything that Hocus Pocus wants to be and is 100% not. Like, I hated that movie when I saw it in the movie theater. And then, there's a generation, obviously, that loves that film. And if you're part of that generation, I feel sorry for you. But friends were like, oh, we got to get, they're bringing it back into the theater or renting the theater. We're doing a screening. And I went and I hated it every bit as much as I hated it the first time. And that movie has a big budget.
It does. And Disney is the backer for that one. It's a Disney film.
Yeah. And like stars across the board. At least for the Three Witches. And, it's like Cassandra Peterson took, a few Band-Aids and a few $1 million and made this movie that I find endlessly entertaining.
It's just fascinating that, to me, there was a lot of excitement for the production company on this. So it was produced by NBC. NBC was getting into making films. Brandon Tartikoff, who was the president at the time of NBC, was a huge fan of Elvira. He loved her shtick. He, watched her Movie Macabre show a ton. She was starting to become more nationally known. Jason was joking with me. He was like, yeah, she was really well known with most people who subscribed to men's magazines because she was very prominently featured in a lot of ads, especially for like beer and stuff like that. Brandon Tartikoff was a huge fan. And so he wanted Elvira to be in a sitcom. He wanted a show for Elvira that could reach a national audience. But Cassandra Peterson was not really going for the TV show. She wanted to do a movie. And he was like, well, okay, we're all in. We're going to do this movie. So they did have some money to back it. But at the same time, they also, because they're a TV studio, a TV company that's trying to get into movies, they're trying to treat it almost like television production.
I mean, it definitely has a kind of a cheap look to it. And it's certainly, for a film with horror overtones, incredibly brightly lit.
Yes. There's very few shadows. There are some nice spooky set pieces. I do appreciate those, but they really don't come until much later in the movie.
They're well placed when they happen, but most of it is high noon lighting.
Bright daylight. Everything's happening in sort of like, 2 p.m. For people who haven't seen this movie, or it's been a really long time and they just need to jog the memory, what is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark about?
I mean, back of the envelope, the elevator speech, it's about boobs.
Yes.
For the most part. It is a nonstop barrage of boob jokes. But if you're talking about plot, on which one hangs many boob jokes, she is working in a show not dissimilar to what she started out doing, where she is introducing and doing comedy stylings before really horrible horror films for a local TV station in, I'm assuming, Los Angeles. And she gets hit on, one time too many, by someone who, of course, wants to touch her boobs with the line, "It's milkin' time." And she quits her job and calls her agent and tries to check on the status of her dream, which is having a show in Las Vegas. And it turns out that she needs money to do her show in Las Vegas. And just conveniently, her Aunt Morgana dies and leaves her something in her will. Her great Aunt Morgana, and she said, as she says, I didn't even know I had a good Aunt Morgana, let alone a great one. And she does a cross-country journey to Fallwell, Massachusetts. It is, as a person who grew up in New England, it's fun how she kind of spoofs Puritan New England, where she, of course, sticks out like a sore boob and befriends teens who are intrigued by her, makes enemies, including the brother of her aunt. And so she discovers that she's not going to get a lot of money. She gets something else. What she gets willed, she thinks is worthless, along with her aunt's house. And her uncle really wants the item that she thinks is worthless. It all leads to, as most good things do, a potential witch burning and her getting chased by a demonic iteration of her uncle. I don't know. How'd I do? Is that fair?
I think that's good.
Okay.
I like how you said it's contrived very, very easily. And she has a great line when this does happen. She receives a telegram in her dressing room saying that, your great aunt has passed away and she's left you something. And she's like, wow, how convenient. Like, it's just, she breaks the fourth wall quite a bit in this movie. She has a lot of her asides or comments are made looking directly at the camera. And I love that because that's part of her shtick. Originally, when she's riffing on these movies, she's talking to an audience. She's talking to the viewer. Seeing her in this film, she doesn't stop doing that. She'll make comments to the kids. She'll make comments to the adults. But most of all, she likes to take a look at the camera, break that fourth wall, and just wink at the audience, which is pure camp. That, to me, is one of the reasons why I fell in love with this movie. But I'm sure that's one of the reasons, her personality is one of the biggest reasons why people love it.
Yeah.
Her personality, her two big personalities.
There's three big reasons to love it. One of them is her personality. I mean,
yes.
Even just in the opening credit sequence, which happens after she's quit her job and starts her cross-country trip, we are treated to her washing her car window with her boobs squishing up against the window, a hot dog falling on her boobs. It's just, and there's a great little cameo moment where she picks up a hitchhiker. I didn't realize until we were looking at the credits that it's a rather famous drag queen, Joey Arias, out of drag. You forgot your axe. Throws it at him. It's just, there's so many jokes packed in so quickly. Not everything lands. Well,
there's actually two other fun cameos too that I liked in that. And again, I was learning more about this. There's a great documentary, and I'll reference it again at the end of the episode. But there's a great documentary, Movie Macabre, that talks about the making of it. And her writing partner in this is John Paragon, also known as Jambi, the genie from Pee-wee's Playhouse. But they were in the Groundlings together. And he was a frequent contributor to the Movie Macabre show. Like, he would call in sometimes and play these characters. Well, he co-wrote the movie with her, and he also appears as the gas station attendant that she unfortunately blows up just by letting all the gas just sort of run out of her car. She drives off, and he tosses a cigarette and explodes. But that's John Paragon.
Goodness, I would not have recognized him as John B.
He's totally unrecognizable. And then also, this was a weird cameo I didn't know anything about until I looked up the cast list. But one of the cast members was a gentleman named Bill Cable. He's only in the movie very briefly. He plays the traffic cop that gives her latest in a giant stack of moving violation tickets. He's unimpressed by her boobs. She tries to seduce him, and he's like, and rips off the ticket and hands it to her.
You can hum a few bars, I'll fake it.
Yeah, it's like, do you know how fast you're going? Hum a few bars, I can fake it. He is actually, Bill Cable is most famously known, at least in the 70s, as a male model who modeled a lot for Cult, as well as a lot of other men's magazines. He was also in several racy films, although he didn't usually do the final performance.
Thank you for doing this in-depth research.
Yeah, I was really interested. He apparently was friends with Sandra Peterson and with Paul Rubens. And when he had sort of he unfortunately passed away after a motorcycle accident several years after this film. They attended his funeral as well. So he's, it's just really interesting having split-second character, but they're friends of hers that
and
show
she
up
did
in
the
this
same
movie.
thing in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in the bar scene where, the biker bar scene. And she's got like one line, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not in Elvira drag, but you can tell it's her. And she was a member of the Groundlings.
Yep. They just like throwing their friends in these movies. And it's fun if you can spot them. I mean, one of the other big main characters in this is Edie McClurg. Her character, Chastity.
Chastity Pariah.
Yeah, Chastity Pariah. It's like, oh, I thought that was I thought that cleared up. Like, it's an STD. She was also a longtime Groundlings performer as well. She has a much more prominent role here, but it's so fun seeing these people. And the more you watch, the more you may be able to point them out and say, oh, wait, he looks really familiar. I've seen her somewhere.
Yeah, the woman who runs the motel, I know her from stuff. And it's just like, other than the forgettable teens, Jeff Conaway.
Jeff Conaway's in it. Kurt Fuller, who plays the weird, lecherous real estate agent.
Oh, yeah, I've seen him in a bunch of things.
Yeah, this was one of his first movies, actually. And like in his first scene, he had to grab Elvira's boobs. So that was a very much like, nice to meet you, Cassandra. Hi, I'm going to be grabbing your tits. But yeah, I mean, there's some fun things in there. And the woman that you mentioned, that actress is Pat Crawford Brown, and her husband William Dool, or the actor who played her husband William Dool. Those character actors, I think they had always played little old people going back decades, but they're instantly recognizable from like the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Oh yeah,
just seeing those faces and playing pretty similar types of characters too. It's like they're pretty puritanical. They're constantly disapproving of things, and especially a person like Elvira coming to their town, wearing her makeup with her crazy hair and her giant tits.
Exactly. And the guy who plays her Uncle Vinny.
Uncle Vinny.
Yeah. She goes, oh, remember at the reading of the will, oh, and you must be Uncle Remus and Auntie M. Reading of the will scene where it's like a game show. And that, yeah, just crazy. Sorry.
There's so many
I'm
great
going to go down
moments
so many rabbit holes with this.
Obviously, like, her car breaks down immediately, and of course all the teen boys are like, tits! And then also immediately are charmed by her and push her car over to the mechanics. But everybody in this town comes out. And the town itself, it's all filmed on the backlot in Warner Brothers, so you might recognize it as the town from the Gilmore Girls, because all the buildings are there. But every single person, it seems, who lives in town decides to run out of whatever store or business they're in just to get a look at Elvira, like disrupting everything. And that's where Edie McClurg makes her first appearance. And also, I think Miss Yvonne from Pee-wee's Playhouse, also one of the other Groundlings, Lynn Marie Stewart, who played Miss Yvonne, she plays the bartender later on in the bowling alley. Not Patty, but the other woman who works there. So she's just kind of blinking, you miss her kind of thing.
Oh, wow. Now I'm going to have to watch it tonight just to see Miss Yvonne, the prettiest woman in Puppetland.
Absolutely.
Serve a beer.
There's a bunch of teens in there, not just the boys, but also this one girl who her parents run the motel and they don't like her wearing makeup, and
they're the geezers.
Freedom. Yeah, she wants to be free. She wants to express herself and have a boyfriend. And of course, Elvira's going to help her out with that.
Her look when she sneaks out, which I'm sure they fully intended it to be sexy, but it is 80s-tastic and horrible at the same time.
It is, she's looking fancy to go to the mall on a Wednesday night is what her look screams.
The teens are the only real drag in the movie. You know, she was stuck with it, but it's worth suffering through those teens for the setups, for the jokes.
It's true. You know, the background with the teens, this movie was rated PG-13. And at the time, the reviewers were like, I can't believe this is PG-13. It's so dirty. Like, there's constant sex jokes and boob jokes. And what parent would allow their kids to see this movie? And the whole point for having the teens in there was so that it would encourage the young folks to come out to see the movie. So they kind of, I think they misunderstood how to expand the audience on this film. If they made it an R-rated movie, I bet it would have made money.
Yeah.
It probably would have made money as an R-rated, and you just drop the teens and you just make it like a full-on sex comedy horror movie.
My guess is she's made her money on that film, though, because
she has by now.
Yeah. And if you in the listening audience have not read or listened to Yours Cruelly, her memoir, she talks about the film and the terrible sequel. It's not really a sequel. I mean, she's playing Elvira again, but that's all she really has played for the most part, or why she's known. And I think after the modest success of the first film, she was, I think, eager to build on the cult audience of the second film. And there's terrible jokes to go around, but it's like she shot it in like Eastern Europe and it's crazy. Anyway, sorry, I digress. But listen to her memoir, I enjoy listening to memoirs read by the people who lived them. And she's obviously very good at delivery. Yeah. So highly recommend Yours Cruelly.
One of the cool little tidbits that I learned about the teens, because of course they had to add the teens last minute, they had to shoehorn in all the storyline, but they were auditioning actors to play, I guess, one of the main teen boys. Eventually that role went to a kid named Chris Cam. The character was Randy, as the blonde. When auditioning, it was between him and one other young actor who was blonde, and the other actor didn't get it. And of course it came out a few years after that other actor was Brad Pitt. And the reason he was not hired was because he was too attractive. And it would have distracted from the actual love interest in the movie, the character of Bob, played by Daniel Greene, who I had a huge crush on when I was much younger.
I mean, super duper hunky.
Oh, he's this beefy dude in like a flannel shirt and tight jeans and a little bit of fur and all that. Like, oh, yes, absolutely. But apparently, compared to Brad Pitt, a young Brad Pitt, they believed he would draw too much focus away from, like, nobody would believe that Elvira would be into like this kind of dopey himbo and instead not into this teenage boy because he was so cute. So, you know, they never gave him the role, and he went on, stumbled into acting for the next, 40 years, and hopefully he found some success. But interesting continuing tidbit, though, Brad Pitt did end up buying Cassandra Peterson's house.
Oh, interesting. I probably heard that in the book.
It's just so funny, that there's a Brad Pitt connection to this movie.
Absolutely. So I have to tell, all right, so you said you were 8 when you saw it?
I was 9 because it came on, because it came out in 1988. So I just turned 8 years old. There was no way in hell my parents would ever take me to a PG-13 movie, especially one starring boobs. So that's why I'm gay. Thanks, Mom and Dad. But
it's their fault.
It's their fault. But it came out on pay-per-view in 1989, and I was one of those kids that would watch the pay-per-view channel and get all the previews, and they would also do like the first 10 minutes of the movie. So when I was 9, or actually still 8 years old probably, I memorized the first 10 minutes of that movie because I kept watching the opening sequence over and over and over again, and the trailer and all of that. So, I just was like fascinated with it. And finally, I think a couple of years after that, I was able to go and rent the movie for the first time. So I was like, it had primed me from a young age to like this movie. And of course, I fell in love with it.
Oh, you're going to love my story of how I first saw it. Picture it. 1991.
Sicily.
Sicily. Not far off Rome. I am a student at the North American College, which was a seminary to study to be a Catholic priest. And, there are some people who had TVs, but most people didn't. I can't remember if they were even allowed, but there was one big TV room that all the students shared. There was this one guy, I wish I could remember his name, who signed out the TV. You had to sign it out to watch Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I knew that he liked horror films. I can't remember if I kind of stumbled into the screening or if someone's like, you need to watch this. And I remember some of the students, because as you can imagine, there were some who would find such material to be less than suitable for God's house. I knew the movie had come out. I didn't know anything about its reputation. And I was howling. And you would hear guys come into the room and then sigh and then leave. And I was just like, I love this movie so much. So much. And it was like kind of the perfect naughty way to watch a drag show when I never had even been to a drag show.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's essentially a drag show. And she knows exactly what she's doing. Her delivery is impeccable. And the fact that I was in the seminary watching this movie about a woman who was rejecting all the mores of the Puritans in this town, even though she's very horny for Bob, there's no nudity. There's some side boob. There's no real sex scene.
She turns off the light. They basically, they're up in the attic. They're like leaning towards the ground, and she takes a look at the camera and turns off the little light in the lantern. And that's it. That's how it ends. The sex
Is
scene.
it? Or is that
Yeah.
when the snake appears?
It was right after the snake. So
okay.
she's
She
like,
does
oh,
the-
Bob. And the snake, it's like, oh, Bob, this is a bit. And he turns a light on, and she's got a boa constrictor that's just in her arms. But then later, after he saves her from the snake, basically.
Yeah, there's stooping. But I mean,
yeah.
in terms of it's risque humor. It's like Mae West on steroids kind of stuff. And I think any of the more moral members of the seminary did not last to the Las Vegas finale, which probably would have blown their minds.
Oh, yeah. All those shirtless men dressed as devils while she does her
tassel dance.
Her tassel dance, which is like one boob and then the other boob and then two of them together and doing the figure eights. And you're like, this is beautiful. It's brilliant.
It
brilliant
really
cinema.
is. And yeah, I mean, that was probably one of the best indicators that I was not going to go the distance and that I would end up writing for drag queens. I mean, this may come, as a surprise, but there are a quantity of gay men in the seminary. Birds of a feather would flock to a screening of Elvira.
That's, yeah. I mean, the fact that was where you saw this for the first time is pretty telling.
Yeah, and I think the next time I saw that guy, because he dropped out before I did, I think the next time I saw him was at Pride, New York.
That was maybe that's now part of the curriculum at the North American school. They're like, watch this movie. If you like it and laugh, we will allow you to withdraw.
Here's a plane
school.
ticket.
Here's the plane ticket home. Yeah, that's probably. This film really plays with religion kind of cheekily. One of the big reasons, besides the boobs, that my parents wouldn't have liked this is, of course, there's open witchcraft. The object that she inherits from her aunt, other than the house and the dog, Algonquin or Gonk, it's this poodle that's adorable that she shaves and gives like a punk makeover, is this recipe book, quote unquote. And the recipe book, of course, is a book of spells. And, she's from a long line of witches who are masters of the dark. And her uncle is just trying to, of course, be the new master of the dark. He's an evil warlock who worships Satan and is, really into controlling the moon. The line, and this is such a ridiculous, cheesy line, is if he has the book at the height of the lunar eclipse, the moon will never shine again. Sure. I guess light will no longer reflect off of the moon. It's what will happen. But of course, he does get a hold of the book, and he does start, getting these powers, start corrupting his body, and he becomes very demonic. It's actually really cool makeup how he starts to mutate and become deformed as he's chasing her. But there's that chase scene.
The chase scene where he's like, wants her ring, and she realizes that the ring must have power, and so she's going to use it. She points at it, flies off her finger, and lands on his. She impales him with a high heel. She's got a Rambo makeover.
They apparently had like a grenade launcher at the local hardware store. It's just so... It's so silly. And of course, in the final confrontation in the house, she's able to draw upon her power to defeat him.
And it's very Wizard of Oz. Like, you always had the power.
Click your heels 3 times. Squish your boobs 3 times,
When he first offers to buy the book from her and she's leaning on his car and he's got the window rolled down. She's like, yeah, I'll do it for $50.
The face of Edie McClurg as she's like, she comes like, skittering by, and then they hear that and she's like, oh, and like runs off like, oh.
And the same thing with probably the most famous scene in the movie is when she's helping change the marquee on the movie theater. It's a visual joke. Like the setup to that, where he drops the letter on her head and he comes down. How's your head? Haven't had any complaints yet. That's when I was sold on that movie forever. And then she gets up and changes the marquee. And I'm like, all right, Elvira, I'm yours forever. She is a bucket list for me. Like,
yeah,
I would love to meet her. There are so few camp figures. These camp icons are so hard to come by these days. I'm trying to think of like, who's a modern... I think Meg Salter has potential. She's doing O'Mary on Broadway right now, and it's perfect casting. But like, I never need to see her in something serious. Amy Sedaris. There's a camp icon. When she first showed up in The Mandalorian, I almost fell over. I was like, how did she sneak into Star Wars?
Peli Motto. She's one of my favorite characters from The Mandalorian.
I haven't seen the movie. Is she in the movie?
She's not in the movie. She does not make an appearance. We were waiting for it.
I would burn the cinema to the ground.
I want my Peli Motto. Where's my Amy Sedaris?
I do have to say that the Strangers with Candy movie is terrible. The TV series was so good. And it's like, I don't know that I would enjoy an Elvira TV series the way that I enjoyed this movie. It was like the perfect amount, perfect container for those boobs. And, 3 seasons of Strangers with Candy, who knows how long that could have gone on and stayed as funny as it was. Mm-hmm. And you could never do it now because the humor is so politically incorrect. But for some reason, it did not translate to the big screen.
And this, I think with Elvira, it's similar. You have this great movie or this fun movie that's perfectly made for people who love Elvira. People who had probably gotten to know her watching the weekly show, watching the horror movie hosting, and seeing her in, making cameos on TV and things like that. But would it have worked as a TV series? Probably not, because if it was going to be on TV in the 80s, especially, it would have been really toned down. There would have probably been a laugh track that would have been annoying. And
well, I mean,
she
when
would
you
have been able
look
to
at
be
what,
herself.
when you look at what Pee Wee Herman was able to accomplish.
Yeah.
And he did that on Saturday mornings.
For kids.
For kids.
I loved it. I never missed an episode. Never missed an
Yeah.
episode.
I don't know that. I mean, maybe, she certainly seems talented enough. She could have pulled off something, but I think this is forever one of the saddest things that's ever happened to me. I was given the opportunity to write for Madam the Puppet. This is of Wayland Flowers' Adam fame.
Yeah.
And Wayland died in the 80s from AIDS-related complications, and they wanted to bring the character back. And going back and watching Madam on Solid Gold, on Hollywood Squares, she's like a drag queen. She's like a gay man, and what he did was so subversive with that puppet, because he was able to go on to things like Dinah Shore and Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas and be campy as fuck and get away with it because he wasn't in frame. It was the female puppet that was saying it. And she had at one point a sitcom that was called Madam's Place, and it was 5 nights a week. 5 nights a week. So they had to crank out a lot of material. I think they did 75 episodes of it before it was canceled. But the thing is, it's hard to take a camp character like Madam, or I think potentially like Elvira, and make her the center of the sitcom. Obviously, Elvira filled the screen nicely. And Pee Wee Herman did his movie before he did his TV series, but I think he's probably one of the few kind of things that really, I think in the 60s, you could get weird shows like The Munsters and Addams Family and Mr. Ed, these kind of high concept, low concept shows, My Mother the Car. And by the 80s, you had Alf.
Alf was probably the most far out.
And Small Wonder.
How long did that last? It didn't last that long. Out of This World, I'm also thinking, was another one from the late 80s with the girl who could stop time. And
I don't
she was
remember
half alien.
that one.
Her dad lived in a little crystal cube thing, or was talking to her from the crystal cube thing. It's hard, those kind of weird shows, especially when you're trying to compete with 2 other networks for 100% of the audience. There's only so much that people are willing to kind of put up with when there are a couple other channels. And of course, in the 80s, you had cable. Yeah. So there was something else that they could be watching. They'd be watching 24-hour news if they wanted to. And then you had Fox that shows up, and now you have a 4th network in the mid 80s. But until the 2000s and the streaming boom and premium cable shows, golden age of TV, people didn't want to take risks as much for a while.
But she gifted us with this film, and I will forever be grateful.
Absolutely. Right. I did want to make a quick mention of the character of Bob, in that she modeled him after one of her dearest friends who had passed away. He gets the dedication at the end of the movie. That's her friend who helped actually create the look of Elvira, the costuming, the hair, the whatever. And he also painted the big portrait that's in the house.
Oh,
it was a portrait that he had painted of Cassandra Peterson, but that painting it's used to represent Morgana, like Aunt Morgana, and that's the gentleman Robert Redding. So Robert was a really good friend of Cassandra Peterson's, partner in crime. He unfortunately also passed away from AIDS related complications in I think 86, so before the movie came out. She did get to homage him in this film with the character of Bob, who I think Daniel Greene kind of looks a little bit like Robert. He's beefier, but but it's has
not
the same personality.
Actor, but he's a delight to the eyes.
He is, but that kind of aw shucks or kind of very innocent way of delivering things, that's how she saw Robert a lot. So that's the whole character is modeled after that person. So
she's not incredibly generous with punchlines for other characters. Edie McClurg,
sure. Yeah.
yes.
Is this seat taken?
Does Patty get any punchlines, or is she all set up? She's the villain.
She is all set up. So Patty is played by Susan Kellerman. She's got the pointiest boobs in town before Elvira shows up, and Elvira's boobs are much bigger. And then, of course, the big joke afterwards is that her bra is padded to the gods. The little bit of trivia that I found about her character, about the character Patty, is that Susan herself is not ungifted in the chest area. And so they had to have a body double in the reveal scene. They had to get a body double who was very flat-chested. So that was just a funny little thing that she had revealed in the documentary about the movie. So usually for my other episodes, what I do is I always ask the guests what their favorite scary moment is, or scary scene or spooky scene. And, it's mostly, it's very comedy. It's very camp. It's very, it's funny, but there are some kind of spooky moments and spooky scenes. Do you have one that kind of sticks out to you as a favorite?
Well, when we were chatting before, I was saying the thing that plays the most like a horror scene is her uncle chasing her through the graveyard, but of course it's laced with jokes. But I want to revise that and say the scene where she's making dinner for Bob with her recipe book from her aunt. It's probably, it's very funny. It's very funny. But the moment when she says, "It's soup," and takes the lid off is pretty classic, like kind of jump scare sort of moment. It's, of course, then played for laughs, but it's like she knows what she's doing. You just wish she had a director who was more keyed into. But that is one of the scenes that's at least shot in a bit of a darker, grittier style than much of the film. Like one of the funniest things is when she does her pre-show at the movies for the night with the teens, and it's this homage to Flashdance.
Yes.
It's just so ridiculous because it really has no business being in the film, but it's the 80s and it fit perfectly. And when she's doing her handsprings and you can tell it's not her, it's so funny.
Well, and I love that part too, just because, even though she's riffing off of Flashdance, it's also an homage to Carrie because she gets the bucket of, when she finishes her act and she leans back in the chair and pulls the string. It's supposed to be a bucket of glitter that references the water that happened to Jennifer Beals, I guess it was.
Yeah.
Whoever it's in Flashdance.
Yeah.
And instead, Patty has replaced it with presumably paint or something.
I think it's tar because she feathers.
That's right, tar. Yeah, she replaces it with tar and then shakes out feathers. But it's this black goo that goes all over her, and it's very,
I think there's a lot of great references sort of laced throughout, and Easter eggs as we call them now. But I forgot Carrie, of course.
She was a horror host for a long time. I think was still a horror host technically when this movie was out. But she'd seen horror movies. She was able to reference a ton of different things, or could reference a lot of things. I'm not sure how much was maybe cut out of this that we didn't see, cut for time or cut to make room for the teens. But this is definitely one of those movies where I'm sure she was able to flex a lot of her knowledge.
Yeah, it's obviously she's working in her zone on this, and I think she's retired Elvira, which I can imagine playing this character that you're known for. She would go do shows at I think Knott's Berry Farm. I don't know if she ever did play Vegas. Did she play Vegas? I hope she did.
I don't know. That would have been. I would hope so. That at some point she did get to.
Yeah, but it and her Vegas act is ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
The dress that she's in is a repurposed Cher dress, Bob Mackie Cher dress.
Oh, they probably had to let the chest out a little bit.
Probably quite a bit. But it was repurposed. It was remade. I'm not exactly sure what performance it originally was from, but
Yeah, no, and I feel lame being like, oh, my favorite scary scene is because there really isn't a scare in the film. I mean, that one moment where it pops out is a good little, but it's coming. It's
Yeah.
coming.
That is the only real jump scare in this entire movie. And it works. I mean, it's definitely one of those, like, you expect it, but you don't expect exactly what happens. And it is practical effects.
It's a puppet.
Bitey puppet snot monster thing that pops out of the casserole, out of her Le Creuset. I guess the only other sort of like real horror scene is with the uncle once he's finally got his power. I do have to say, even the witch burning scene, where the entire town like goes back to their 17th century law book and sets the bonfire, and there's little Girl Scouts roasting marshmallows, and it's so over the top and goofy. There's nothing scary about that. But when he appears afterwards and he's starting to like transform into this sort of demonic creature, this possessed creature, then that's kind of, I think, the real sort of horror moment. But even then, you still, when she's being chased through the cemetery, you were mentioning, how she gets out and how she escapes. She uses her boobs to break open the gate. Like, yeah.
I mean, when it's getting, I know I slagged off the teens, and I hope the teens aren't listening. But I mean, when it gets plotty is when the movie starts to sag a little bit. When it's just bit after bit after bit, it pays dividends. I imagine with your listenership, hopefully a lot of them have seen it. But if you haven't, it is time better spent than watching Elvira's Haunted Hills. I mean, she's a gay icon, and certainly straight men will enjoy this film. But I think gay men will have an appreciation for the level of camp that this movie provides. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark is a really terrific, very funny film.
And if you would like to see more of Daniel Greene being shirtless, because he never loses his shirt in this movie. He just keeps the flannel on all for the entire film. Basically, he starred in a ton of Italian action genre films in the 80s, where he's frequently shirtless and or sleeveless. And he was also in Falcon Crest. He was on Falcon Crest for years. So if you like your classic 80s nighttime soaps, then there you go.
I was a Dynasty queen. Sorry.
There you go. You missed it. You missed Daniel Greene. He probably had multiple scenes where he was just coming out of a shower or sitting up in bed, having just slept with somebody else's
Damn
wife.
it.
Yeah.
I put my money on the wrong, yet far more glamorous horse.
Absolutely. That show was filled with drag queens. Dynasty was all drag queens all the time.
Exactly.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for coming on, talking about Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Can't wait for the next movie or two that we talk about.
Yes. I'm going to start putting together a list. You're not getting rid of me now.
Excellent.
I'm in every place in this town, and no one will give me a job. It's like it's a conspiracy or something.
You know what your problem is? Chastity pariah.
Ooh, I thought that cleared up.
No, chastity pariah. She's the old biddy. She's got the whole town turned against you.
Oh, swell. So now no one will hire me, and I'm flat busted. I'm broke.
You've just listened to another episode of the Bear Cave of Terror, and if you haven't seen Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, or after listening to us are struck with an irresistible compulsion to watch it again, it is streaming on several free services like Tubi or Plex, and on other services like Amazon Prime. Or, if you'd like to buy a copy, Arrow Video just came out recently with a restored 4K Blu-ray version with a lot of extras. That's great to check out. And Jacques, if listeners would like to get in touch with you or check out more of what you've done, how would they do that?
I have a website that is JacquesLamarrePlaywright.com. That's JACQUESLAMARRE Playwright.com. I am on Facebook and Instagram, but I'm a terrible Instagrammer. So if you really want to follow me, Facebook is the place where I let my stupid flag fly. Search for Steve and then find me in his friend list, or just put my name in Jacques Lamarre. There's a bunch of us running around in Canada and France maybe, but not necessarily in the continental U.S.
Awesome. Yeah. And also, if you'd like to, you can follow the Bear Cave of Terror on Blue Sky and Instagram at Bear Cave of Terror, or send an email to bearcaveofterror@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, it's always much appreciated. And a list of sources will be available in the show notes if you'd like to learn more about Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. And remember, if they ever ask about me, tell them that I was more than just a great set of boobs. I was also an incredible pair of legs. Good night, everybody.
But if they ever ask about me, tell them I was more than just a great set of boobs. I was also an incredible pair of legs. And tell them that I never turned down a friend. That I never turned down a stranger, for that matter. And tell them that when all is said and done, I only ask that people remember me by 2 simple words. Any 2 as long as they're simple.